Xenobiologist Threll 9 adjusted the viewing screen with one of her 4 arms while the other 3 worked on different control panels. The blue and green planet below looked peaceful from this distance, but her instruments told a different story. Heat signatures bloomed across 3 continents like bright flowers of destruction. Each bloom meant another human city had just died. "Another nuclear detonation in Sector 7, she reported to the observation deck. Her voice carried the flat tone that all Zentari used when discussing the death of primitive species. That makes 47 in the last solar rotation. Commander Vexthal of the Etherin Collective floated near the main display, his translucent form shimmering with soft purple light. Through their shared consciousness, he felt the sadness of his people as they watched another young species destroy itself. The probability calculations were correct, he said, his mental voice touching the minds of everyone present. They reached atomic capability only 73 years ago. The pattern holds true. The third member of the observation team clicked his mandibles in what might have been agreement. Hive worker Zik belonged to the Keth volume, a species that had given up individual thought long ago in favor of perfect unity. Through the neural link that connected him to billions of his kind, he spoke with the voice of his entire race. The collective has observed this outcome in 96% of species that achieve nuclear technology before achieving wisdom. The humans follow the expected path. Threll 9 looked down at her instruments again. The humans had been under council surveillance for over 3,000 years, ever since they first learned to make fire in organized groups. The Galactic Council watched many worlds, waiting to see which species might one day join them among the stars. Most never made it past their first atomic war. "Look at the radiation readings," Threll 9 said, pointing to the data streams flowing across her screens. "The entire northern continent is becoming uninhabitable. The atmospheric contamination will spread globally within 10 rotations." Commander Vexthal drifted closer to the viewing screen. The Etherians had evolved beyond physical bodies millions of years ago, but they still remembered what it felt like to breathe air and feel solid ground beneath their feet. Through the collective consciousness, he could sense his people's deep sorrow for the humans below. They had such potential. Their art, their music, their stories. The collective has been monitoring their cultural transmissions. They created beauty even in the midst of their violence. Hive worker Zik processed this information through the vast network of Keth volume minds. Beauty is inefficient. The collective learned this truth eons ago. Individual creativity leads to chaos. The humans proved this point with their self-destruction. If they had achieved unity as we did, they would still exist. But at what cost? Vexthal asked, though he knew the answer. The Keth volume had achieved perfect peace by giving up everything that made individuals unique. No more war, but also no more art, no more dreams, no more personal love or loss. They existed as one mind in billions of bodies. Threll 9 ignored their philosophical debate and focused on her readings. As a Zentari, she had been bred for scientific observation and logical analysis. Emotions were inefficient tools that led to poor decisions. The electromagnetic pulses from their weapons have destroyed most of their communication systems. The remaining population centers are isolated from each other. Standard models predict complete societal collapse within 2 rotations, followed by biological extinction within 50. She began entering data into the Council's vast database. Every species that achieved technology was carefully documented, their rise and fall recorded for future study. The humans would become another entry in the long list of failed civilizations. Their page would note their achievements in mathematics, their remarkable artistic output, and their tendency toward both extreme violence and surprising compassion. It would also note the final date of their existence. "Beginning preparation of post-extinction protocols," Threll 9 announced. The cleanup crews will need to wait approximately 500 rotations for radiation levels to decrease to safe limits. Then we can begin resource extraction and planetary restoration. This was how it always went. The Council would watch a species destroy itself, then move in to clean up the mess. The useful materials would be harvested, the planet would be restored to its natural state, and eventually new life would evolve to start the cycle again. It was efficient and logical. Commander Vexthal felt the weight of billions of Etherean minds touching his consciousness. They all shared the same sadness, the same sense of loss. The humans were unusual, he said. Most species show either pure aggression or pure cooperation. The humans showed both in extreme measures. They could commit terrible acts of violence, then show incredible kindness to complete strangers. They could destroy entire cities, then risk their lives to save a single child. Contradiction leads to instability, hive worker Zik replied. The collective achieved perfection by eliminating such contradictions. All Keth volume think as one, all Keth volume act as one. There is no conflict because there are no opposing views. Threll 9 looked up from her instruments. The contradictions made them unpredictable. Our behavioral models had difficulty accounting for their actions. In their final war, some fought to the death while others tried to help enemy wounded. Some hoarded supplies while others gave away their last food to hungry neighbors. Chaotic behavior patterns. On the main screen, another bright flash appeared over what had once been a major human population center. The three observers watched in silence as another million humans died in nuclear fire. Soon there would be no more flashes, no more heat signatures, no more radio transmissions struggling through the electromagnetic chaos. Earth would join the countless other dead worlds that littered the galaxy. At least their suffering will be brief, Commander Vexthal said, sharing his people's compassion even for a doomed species. The radiation will kill most of the survivors. Within a few rotations, better than slow starvation or disease. Hive worker Zik processed casualty estimates through the collective consciousness. Approximately 7 billion individuals at the start of hostilities. Current estimates suggest less than 1 billion remain alive. Extinction probability rises to 99.4%. Threll 9 nodded and continued her documentation. She had observed the death of 16 species during her service with the Council. The humans would be number 17. After the first few, the process became routine. Watch the atomic fires burn, record the final transmissions, wait for the silence that always came, but something made her pause as she worked. The human radio signals had not completely stopped. Scattered transmissions still fought through the electromagnetic interference, voices calling out in the chaos. Most were cries for help or expressions of fear and pain, but some were different. Some were humans trying to organize rescue efforts, sharing information about safe areas, offering help to anyone who could hear them, even as their world burned. Around them, even as radiation poisoned their air and water, some humans were still trying to save each other. It was illogical, it was inefficient. It was exactly the kind of behavior that had led them to destroy themselves, but it was also something that Threll 9 had never observed in a dying species before. Usually, the final days were marked by complete social breakdown, with survivors fighting each other for the last resources. The humans were dying, but they had not stopped being human. She decided not to mention this observation in her report. It was not scientifically significant, just another example of human unpredictability. Soon the voices would stop forever, and Earth would become another silent world in the Council's database. 5 years had passed since the last nuclear weapon exploded on Earth. Threll 9 stared at her instruments with 3 of her eyes while the 4th looked at the calculation screens. The numbers made no sense. According to every model the Galactic Council had developed over millions of years, there should be nothing alive on the planet below, except maybe some insects and simple bacteria, but the readings showed something impossible. Commander Vexthal, she called out, her voice carrying a tone that no Zentauri had used in centuries. It was confusion mixed with something that might have been excitement. You need to see this data. The Etherian Collective's representative floated over to her station, his translucent form shimmering with curiosity. Through the shared consciousness of his people, he could feel millions of minds focusing their attention on the small observation post. What have you discovered? Threll 9 pointed at her screens with 2 arms while operating controls with the other 2. Life signs, organized life signs. Not just scattered survivors hiding in caves. I am detecting coordinated movement patterns across 17 different locations. Hive worker Zik clicked his mandibles, the sound sharp in the quiet observation deck. Through the neural link to his collective, he processed the information instantly. Impossible. The radiation levels remain at lethal concentrations. No carbon-based. Life form can survive in that environment for extended periods. But the evidence was right there on the screens. Heat signatures moved in patterns that suggested planning and purpose. Radio transmissions, weak but definitely artificial, carried voices speaking in various human languages. Most surprising of all, the electromagnetic signatures suggested that some humans were actually building things. Look at Sector 12, Threll 9 said, highlighting an area that had been completely destroyed in the nuclear exchange. I am detecting construction activity. They appear to be digging extensive tunnel systems. Commander Vexthal extended his consciousness toward Earth, trying to touch the minds of the beings below. What he found surprised him. Instead of the desperate, broken thoughts he expected from a dying species, he sensed determination and hope. The humans were not just surviving. They were planning for the future? This contradicts all our models, he said, sharing his amazement with the Aetherian collective. Species that survive atomic warfare typically show massive psychological trauma. The survivors usually become territorial and aggressive, fighting each other for remaining resources. But these humans are working together. Hive worker Zik processed this information through billions of connected minds. The collective finds this behavior highly unusual. In our observations of 347 species that achieved nuclear capability, none showed cooperative behavior post-extinction event. The humans should be killing each other for food and shelter. Threll 9 adjusted her sensors to get clearer readings. What she found made her question her own instruments. I am detecting agricultural activity. They are growing food in contaminated soil. The biological readings suggest they have developed some method of cleaning radiation from their growing areas. This was wrong. This was impossible. Radiation cleanup required advanced technology that took most species centuries to develop. The humans had been atomic capable for less than 100 years total. They should not have the knowledge or resources to attempt such projects. Perhaps our instruments are malfunctioning, Hive worker Zik suggested. The collective recommends running full diagnostic procedures. But Threll 9 had already done that, twice. The readings were accurate. Somehow, impossibly, the humans were not only alive but actually rebuilding their civilization in the middle of a radioactive wasteland. Commander Vexthal focused his attention on the largest group of survivors, located in what used to be called North America. Through the collective consciousness of his people, he could sense the humans' emotional states. What he found defied everything the Aetherians knew about traumatized populations. They are not just surviving, he announced to the observation deck. They are teaching their children. I can sense young minds learning mathematics, science, engineering. The adults are passing on knowledge instead of just fighting for daily survival. Threll 9 pulled up historical data on her screens. I have reviewed the records of all previous species that faced extinction events. None attempted large-scale education during the survival phase. Most showed complete breakdown of social learning structures. The three observers watched in fascination. As more data came in, the humans had not just maintained their social structures. In some ways, they had improved them. Communities that had never cooperated before the war were now sharing resources and knowledge freely. Information about radiation cleanup techniques spread from one group to another through crude but effective communication networks. Look at this, Threll 9 said, highlighting new sensor data. They have established supply lines between different survivor groups. Food from agricultural areas is being transported to manufacturing centers. Materials from manufacturing areas are being sent to construction sites. This requires planning and trust on a level that most species only achieve after centuries of peace. Hive worker Zik found this particularly disturbing. The collective achieved perfect cooperation by eliminating individual thought. These humans maintain individual personalities while somehow achieving collective action. This should not be possible. The most surprising discovery came when Threll 9 analyzed the construction patterns in more detail. The humans were not just building shelters or basic survival facilities. They were creating infrastructure for a technological civilization. Power generation facilities, manufacturing plants, research laboratories, and most incredible of all, schools and libraries. They are preserving their culture, Commander Vexthal observed, his amazement rippling through the Etherean collective consciousness. Most post-extinction survivors focus entirely on physical survival. Art, music, literature, these become meaningless luxuries. But the humans are teaching their children to read, to create, to dream. Threll 9 discovered something else that made her question everything she knew about species development. I am detecting medical facilities. Not just basic first aid stations, but actual hospitals with sophisticated equipment. They are caring for their sick and injured instead of abandoning them. This violated every principle of post-catastrophe behavior. Resources were supposed to be too scarce for non-productive members of society. The strong were supposed to survive while the weak died. But the humans were using precious energy and materials to heal people who could not contribute to survival. Efforts, perhaps, Commander Vexthal suggested. We have been wrong about human nature. We observed their capacity for violence and assumed it was their dominant trait. But maybe their capacity for cooperation is equally strong. Hive worker Zik processed this through the collective consciousness. If this is true, it changes our understanding of species development. The collective believed that advanced cooperation required the elimination of individual will. The humans suggest another path might be possible. As the months passed, the impossible became undeniable. The human population was not decreasing, it was slowly growing. Children were being born in the underground cities and tunnel networks. These children showed no signs of radiation poisoning. Somehow, the humans had created safe environments in the middle of a poisoned world, more disturbing for the observers. The humans were beginning to spread out from their initial survival areas, not as desperate refugees fleeing from one contaminated zone to another, but as organized groups with specific purposes. Some were establishing new agricultural sites. Others were setting up manufacturing facilities. Still others were creating research stations. They are not just surviving their extinction event. Threll 9 finally admitted, her scientific training forcing her to accept the evidence. They are using it as an opportunity to rebuild their civilization better than it was before. Commander Vexthal shared this revelation with the billions of minds in the Etherean collective. The response was unprecedented in their species' history. For the first time in millions of years, the collective consciousness experienced genuine surprise. We must inform the Council, he said. The humans may be achieving something that no species in galactic history has accomplished. They may be evolving through catastrophe instead of in spite of it. Hive worker Zik's mandibles clicked rapidly as the Keth Volume Collective processed this information. The collective is disturbed by this development. It suggests that individual thought and cooperation are not mutually exclusive. This contradicts the fundamental principles upon which our civilization is based. Threll 9 began preparing her report for the Galactic Council. For the first time in her career, she would be documenting not the death of a species, but something entirely new. The humans were writing a different ending to their story, one that no one had seen before. 50 years had passed since the nuclear fires died. Threll 9 had been replaced twice during that time, but each new Zentauri observer faced the same impossible readings. The humans were not just surviving. They were becoming something new. The current observer, Threll 15, studied her instruments with growing concern. Her predecessor had left detailed notes warning about the unusual nature of human development, but seeing it firsthand was still shocking. The radiation readings across Earth's surface had dropped by 60% in just 5 decades. Natural processes could not account for such rapid environmental recovery. Commander Yexthal, she called to the newest Etherin representative. The atmospheric data from Sector 9 shows impossible results again. The glowing being drifted over to examine her screens. Through the collective consciousness of his people, millions of Etherin minds focused on the readings. What they saw challenged everything they understood about planetary recovery after nuclear catastrophe. The humans have built something that actively cleans their atmosphere, Yexthal observed, his mental voice carrying amazement to every corner of Etherin space. These devices appear to break down radioactive particles and convert them into harmless elements. Hivenode Kix, the current Keth volume representative, processed this information through the vast network of his collective consciousness. The collective finds this technology remarkable. Our own species required 12,000 years to develop effective atmospheric processors. The humans have done it in 50. But that was not the most disturbing discovery. Threll 15 highlighted a section of her biological scanners. Look at the genetic readings from the human children born after the catastrophe. Their DNA shows changes that should take thousands of generations to develop naturally. The data showed children with enhanced intelligence, improved radiation, resistance, and most surprising of all, better emotional stability than their pre-war ancestors. These were not random mutations caused by radiation exposure. The changes were too coordinated, too beneficial to be accidental. Impossible, Yexthal sighed, though his voice carried doubt. Species cannot direct their own evolution so quickly. Genetic adaptation requires vast amounts of time and countless generations. Hivenode Kix clicked his mandibles in the pattern that indicated deep thought. Through the neural link to billions of other Keth volume minds, he processed the implications. The collective has never observed accelerated beneficial mutation in any species. Random genetic changes are almost always harmful. These humans show only positive adaptations. Threll 15 pulled up more disturbing data. The humans had not just adapted to their poisoned world. They had begun to reshape it entirely. Vast underground cities now connected across continents through tunnel systems that stretched for thousands of kilometers. These were not crude survival shelters, but sophisticated urban centers with advanced technology. Their energy production methods are beyond our current understanding, she reported. They appear to have developed fusion reactors that are smaller and more efficient than anything in the Council's technology database. Some of their power sources show readings that suggest they are manipulating matter at the quantum level. This was wrong on every possible level. Species that survived extinction events were supposed to lose technological knowledge, not gain it. The trauma of near extinction should have set human development back by centuries, not accelerated it, Yexthal extended his consciousness toward Earth, trying to understand what was happening in the human communities below. What he found disturbed him deeply. The humans were not just building technology. They were sharing it freely between all their communities. No patents, no trade secrets, no military restrictions. Every advancement was immediately given to everyone. They have eliminated competitive development, he announced to the observation deck. All human communities work together on technological advancement. When one group makes a discovery, they immediately share it with all others. This level of cooperation should be impossible without unified consciousness. Hivenode Kix found this particularly troubling. The collective achieved perfect cooperation by eliminating individual thought. The humans maintain individual creativity while somehow achieving collective action. This suggests a new form of social evolution that the collective did not predict. The biological changes were the most fascinating and frightening aspect of human development. Threll 15 had spent decades studying the genetic data, and her conclusions challenged every principle of evolutionary science. The human children were not just healthier and smarter than their ancestors. They showed emotional and social improvements that seemed designed to prevent another catastrophe. The new generation shows decreased aggression, increased empathy, and enhanced problem-solving abilities, she reported. But these changes are not random. They appear to be exactly the traits needed to prevent the kind of conflicts that led to their near extinction. More disturbing still, the humans seemed to be guiding these changes consciously. Their medical facilities were not just treating diseases and injuries. They were studying their own genetics and apparently influencing the development of their children through methods that the observers could not understand. "They are directing their own evolution?" Yextel said, his amazement rippling through the Etherian collective consciousness. No species in galactic history has achieved conscious control of genetic development so quickly after achieving basic nuclear technology. The underground cities revealed another impossible development. The humans had not abandoned their surface world. Instead, they were actively working to restore it. Massive engineering projects were underway to clean contaminated soil, purify water sources, and rebuild ecosystems. But these were not simple cleanup efforts. "Look at the biological readings from Sector 15, Thrall 15 said, highlighting new data. "They have created entirely new plant species that can survive in contaminated environments while actively removing toxins from the soil. These organisms did not exist before the war. The humans were not just cleaning their world. They were improving it. The new plants were more efficient at producing oxygen, more resistant to disease, and better at preventing soil erosion than the original species they replaced. The humans had turned their poisoned planet into a laboratory for creating better life forms. Hive-node Kix processed this through the collective consciousness and found no precedent in their vast historical database. The collective has observed the development of 143 advanced species. None attempted to improve their planetary ecosystem during post-catastrophe recovery. Most focused entirely on basic survival. But perhaps the most troubling discovery was the humans' approach to education. Instead of focusing only on practical survival skills, they were teaching their children about art, music, philosophy, and scientific theory. They maintained vast libraries in their underground cities, preserving not just their own cultural heritage but also learning about other civilizations through careful observation of council activities. "They know we are watching them," Yextel announced suddenly. "I can sense it in their collective emotional patterns. They are aware of our observation posts but have chosen not to directly contact us yet." This revelation sent shock waves through all three observer species. The humans had detected council surveillance despite technology that was supposed to be completely undetectable to primitive species. More concerning, they had chosen not to reveal this knowledge, which suggested a level of strategic thinking that was unprecedented in post-catastrophe civilizations. Thrall 15 checked her stealth systems and found them functioning perfectly. The humans should not be able to detect their presence. Yet the evidence was undeniable. Subtle changes in human behavior. Patterns suggested they knew they were being watched and were carefully managing what information they revealed. "How long have they known?" she asked. Yextal searched through decades of emotional readings from the human population. "Based on the psychological patterns, I estimate they became aware of our presence approximately 20 years ago. They have been performing for our benefit since then, showing us only what they want us to see." The implications were staggering. If the humans could detect council technology and had been hiding their true capabilities for decades, then everything the observers thought they knew about human development might be wrong. The species that had nearly destroyed itself with primitive nuclear weapons might actually be far more advanced than anyone realized. "We must inform the council immediately," Thrall 15 said. "The humans are not following any known pattern of species development. They may represent something entirely new in galactic evolution." 100 years after the nuclear fires had burned across Earth, the planet looked nothing like the poisoned wasteland it had once been. Thrall 22 stared at her readings in complete disbelief. She had been trained to observe the death of civilizations, not their miraculous rebirth. The atmospheric readings showed clean air across 90% of the planet's surface. The oceans teemed with life forms that had never existed before the catastrophe. Vast forests covered areas that had been barren radioactive desert just decades earlier. But these were not the same ecosystems that had existed before the war. "Commander." "Zexthal," she called to the Aetherian observer, her voice carrying a tone that no Zentari had ever used before. It was wonder mixed with something approaching fear. "The humans have done something that should be impossible." The glowing being approached her station, his consciousness touching the minds of billions of Aetherians across the galaxy. Through their collective awareness, he examined the data that Threlt-22 was displaying. What he found challenged every assumption his species had held about the nature of life itself. "They have not just restored their planet," he said, his mental voice carrying amazement to every corner of Aetheron space. "They have improved it beyond its original state. The biodiversity readings are higher than they were before the war. The atmospheric composition is more stable. Even the planetary magnetic field shows signs of artificial enhancement." Hivecore Nix, the latest Keth volume representative, processed this information through the vast network of connected minds that made up his species. The collective consciousness struggled to understand what they were observing. The collective finds this development beyond current understanding. The humans have achieved planetary engineering capabilities that exceed our own technological abilities. But that was only the beginning of the impossibilities that Earth now presented. The human settlements were no longer hidden underground. Cities rose from the landscape like works of art, their architecture blending seamlessly with the natural environment. These were not the harsh concrete structures of their pre-war civilization, but living buildings that seemed to grow from the Earth itself. "Look at the energy readings from their main population centers," Threlt-22 said, highlighting sections of her display. "They are not just using clean energy sources. They have developed power systems that actually add energy to their planetary ecosystem instead of consuming it. The buildings themselves seemed to be alive. Walls that absorbed carbon dioxide and produced oxygen. Roofs that collected solar energy while providing homes for countless species of plants and animals. Transportation systems that moved people and goods without creating any waste or pollution. The humans had not just learned to live with their environment. They had become part of it. Zexthal focused his consciousness on the human population centers, trying to understand their mental and emotional states. What he found was unlike anything the Aetherian collective had ever encountered. The humans maintained their individual personalities and thoughts, but they were connected in ways that seemed to transcend physical limitations. They have developed a form of collective consciousness that preserves individual identity, he announced, his amazement rippling through billions of Aetherian minds. Each human remains unique, but they can share thoughts, emotions, and knowledge instantly across their entire species. They have achieved what we thought was impossible. This revelation sent shock waves through the observation post. The Aetherians had evolved collective consciousness by gradually merging individual minds until they became one unified being. The Keth volume had achieved unity by eliminating individual thought entirely. The Zentari had remained completely individual. Relying on logic and technology for coordination, the humans had found a fourth path. They had developed the ability to connect their minds while keeping their individual personalities completely intact. They could think as one species when they needed to solve problems, but they remained diverse and creative individuals in their daily lives. How is this possible? Threlt-22 asked, though she already suspected the answer would be beyond her understanding. Hivecore Nix clicked his mandibles in patterns that indicated deep confusion. Through the neural link to his collective, he shared his disturbing thoughts. The collective has never observed this form of consciousness evolution. Individual thought was believed to be incompatible with unified action. The humans prove this assumption wrong. The technological achievements were equally impossible to explain. The humans had developed manufacturing processes that created no waste, because everything was designed to be part of larger cycles. Their transportation systems moved through space in ways that seemed to ignore several fundamental laws of physics. Most disturbing of all, they had begun to manipulate time itself on small scales, allowing them to accelerate crop growth and slow aging processes. Their medical technology has eliminated death from aging, Throughout 22 reported, her scientific training forcing her to accept the impossible data. The human lifespan now appears to be unlimited. They have solved the problem of cellular decay through methods that our scientists cannot even understand. But the humans had not used their extended lifespans to become stagnant or isolated. Instead, they used the additional time to become better versions of themselves. Each generation was wiser, kinder, and more capable than the last. They had turned their greatest weakness, their short individual lifespans, into their greatest strength by learning to transcend physical limitations. Zexthel discovered something even more remarkable when he examined their social structures. The humans had eliminated all forms of conflict without eliminating competition or creativity. They had found ways to channel their aggressive instincts into positive activities like exploration, artistic creation, and scientific discovery. They have wars, he announced, but their wars are against problems, not each other. They declare war on disease, on environmental damage, on ignorance. They have kept their fighting spirit but redirected it toward constructive purposes. The observation team watched in fascination as human communities tackled challenges with the same intensity and coordination that their ancestors had used to destroy each other. When a region faced environmental problems, thousands of humans would mobilize with military precision to restore the ecosystem. When a new scientific question arose, entire cities would dedicate themselves to finding the answer. Most remarkable of all, the humans had begun to extend their improvements beyond their own planet. Careful observations revealed construction projects in Earth's orbit that seemed designed for space exploration. But these were not the crude rockets and space stations that the Council expected from a young technological species. They are building ships, Threlt 22 said, her voice barely above a whisper, vessels capable of interstellar travel. The energy signatures suggest propulsion systems that are more advanced than anything in the Council's current technology database. The ships were beautiful in ways that defied description. They seemed to be grown rather than built, their surfaces rippling with patterns that suggested they were partially alive. The propulsion systems created no harmful radiation or space-time distortions. Instead, they seemed to move by becoming one with the fabric of space itself. Hivecore Nix processed this information through billions of connected minds and reached a conclusion that terrified his entire species. The collective believes the humans may have surpassed our technological development. A species that nearly destroyed itself 100 years ago may now be more advanced than civilizations that have existed for millions of years. But perhaps the most disturbing discovery was the realization that the humans had been carefully controlling what the observers could see. Analysis of their behavior patterns over the past century revealed subtle signs that they had been aware of. Council surveillance from almost the beginning of their recovery. They have been performing for us, Zexthel said, his mental voice carrying the weight of a terrible realization. Everything we have observed has been carefully managed to show us exactly what they wanted us to see. We have no idea what their true capabilities might be. The implications were staggering. If the humans could fool Council surveillance technology for an entire century, if they had developed capabilities that exceeded anything in the galactic database, if they had achieved forms of consciousness and social organization that were theoretically impossible, then they represented something entirely new in the galaxy. The Council must be informed immediately, Threll 22 said. The humans are not a developing species. They may be the most advanced civilization the galaxy has ever seen. The Galactic Council chamber had not seen such chaos in over 10 million years. Representatives from 300 species filled the vast circular hall, their voices creating a storm of confusion and fear that echoed off the crystalline walls. At the center of it all, the three observers from Earth sat in silence, waiting for the debate to end. Threll 22 watched the proceedings with the analytical calm that all Zentari possessed, but inside her mind, calculations ran wild. The probability matrices that had guided her species for eons were breaking down. The humans had made everything unpredictable. High arbiter Kexenol, eldest of the Etherian collective, floated above the assembly. His ancient consciousness touched every mind present, sharing the weight of the decision they faced. Through billions of connected thoughts, the Etherians processed what the Earth observers had reported. "The humans have achieved the impossible," he announced, his mental voice reaching every being in the chamber. "They have transcended the limitations that have defined galactic civilization for millions of years. The question before us now is simple. Do we make contact with a species that may be more advanced than all of us combined?" Prime Node Vex of the HFY collective spoke through the billions of minds that made up his species. "The collective finds this situation unprecedented. Our models predict that contact with a superior species could lead to the dissolution of current galactic order. The humans represent a threat to stability." But other voices disagreed. The Siltheri Trade Federation saw opportunity in human technology. The Nexaran explorers were excited by the possibility of learning new forms of consciousness. The Melody artists were fascinated by human creativity that somehow exceeded anything they had produced in their 3 million years of existence. "We cannot ignore them," declared Ambassador Krell of the Iron Coast Republic. "If they possess technology that surpasses our own, we need to establish diplomatic relations before they decide to contact us on their own terms." The debate had raged for 7 rotations, with no clear consensus emerging. Some species wanted immediate contact. Others proposed continued observation. A few extremist factions even suggested preemptive action to prevent human expansion into galactic space. It was during the 8th rotation of debate that everything changed. A soft chime echoed through the chamber, indicating an incoming transmission. But that was impossible. The Council's meeting location was hidden in a pocket dimension that no known technology could detect or access. The communication systems were shielded by the most advanced encryption in galactic history. "Hi." Arbiter Kexenol gestured for silence. Through the collective consciousness of his people, he reached out to identify the source of the transmission. What he found made his ancient mind recoil in shock. "Honored members of the Galactic Council," a voice said, speaking in perfect council standard despite the fact that humans should have no knowledge of the language. "We hope you will forgive the interruption. We felt it was time we had a proper conversation." The chamber erupted in chaos. Security protocols activated instantly, scanning for any breach in their dimensional barriers. Weapon systems came online across 1,000 council ships. Emergency broadcasts went out to every member species. But nothing they found explained how a human voice was speaking directly into their most secure facility. "Please remain calm," the voice continued, and somehow it carried a quality that made everyone want to listen. "We mean no harm. We simply think it is time we stopped pretending that we do not know about each other." On the main display screen, an image appeared. It showed a human woman with kind eyes and silver hair, sitting in what appeared to be a simple garden. Behind her, other humans could be seen going about their daily activities. Children played on grass that sparkled with an inner light. Adults tended to plants that seemed to sing with silent music. "My name is Elena Vasquez," the woman said, smiling warmly at the assembled representatives. "I speak for the human collective, though each of us remains entirely individual. We have been aware of your observation for 112 of your years. We thank you for your patience in watching our development." Prime Node Vex clicked his mandibles rapidly, processing this information through the vast Keth volume network. "Impossible. Our surveillance technology is undetectable by any known method." Elena's smile widened slightly. "Your technology is indeed impressive. But you have been observing us through instruments designed to study primitive species." "We stopped being primitive some time ago." High Arbiter Kexenol extended his consciousness toward the transmission, trying to understand how it was possible. What he found shook him to his core. The signal was not coming from any technological device. It was being generated by the human consciousness itself, transmitted through methods that the Etherian collective could sense but not comprehend. "You are speaking to us through pure thought," he said, his amazement rippling through billions of connected minds. "Among other methods," Elena replied. We have learned that consciousness is far more flexible than most species realize. We have found ways to bridge the gaps between mind and matter, between individual and collective, between what is and what could be. Threlt-22 activated her instruments, trying to get readings on the transmission. Her sensors showed impossible results. The signal was coming from everywhere and nowhere at once. It existed in normal space, subspace, and several dimensions that Zentari science had no names for. How? She asked, her scientific training demanding answers. Elena turned her attention to the Zentari observer, and Threlt-22 felt a gentle touch in her mind. Not invasive like Etherian collective consciousness, not overwhelming like Keth-volume unity, but something entirely new. A connection that offered knowledge without taking anything away. Your species achieved great things through logic and analysis, Elena said. The Etherians transcended physical limitations through collective consciousness. The Keth-volume found peace through unified thought. Each path taught us something valuable. But we discovered that there was another way. Instead of choosing between individual creativity and collective action, we found methods to have both. The implications were staggering. If the humans had truly mastered consciousness itself, if they could maintain individuality while achieving perfect cooperation, if they could manipulate reality through pure thought, then they had solved problems that had puzzled galactic civilization for millions of years. What do you want from us? Asked Ambassador Krell. Speaking for many species that viewed the humans as a potential threat, Elena's expression grew serious, but her eyes remained kind. We want to learn. Despite our advances, we know that wisdom comes from many sources. Each of your species has walked a different path through the cosmos. You have stories to tell, knowledge to share, perspectives that we cannot gain on our own. And what do you offer in return? Inquired Prime Node Vex. Hope, Elena said simply. We offer proof that there is another way. That species do not have. To choose between individual freedom and collective action. That technology can heal instead of destroy. That consciousness can grow beyond the limitations that most beings accept as absolute. High Arbiter Kexenol processed this through the Etheron collective. For the first time in millions of years, his people felt something they had not experienced since they transcended physical form. They felt excitement about the future. You could have revealed yourselves at any time, he observed. Why now? Elena gestured to something beyond the camera's view, and the image expanded to show human ships unlike anything in the Council's experience. They were works of art that happened to be capable of faster-than-light travel. They moved like living things through space, leaving trails of light that somehow made the vacuum itself more beautiful. Because we are ready to take our place among the stars, she said. We have spent the last century learning to be better than we were. Now we would like to learn from you how to be better than we are. The council chamber fell silent. The greatest political minds in galactic history faced a choice that none of them had ever imagined having to make. Do they welcome a species that might surpass them all? Do they try to control beings who had already proven that control was impossible? Or do they do something that no galactic power had ever done before? We would be honored, High Arbiter Kexenol said finally, to welcome humanity to the galactic community. Not as subjects or allies, but as teachers who might help us all become something greater than we ever imagined possible. Elena's smile lit up the entire chamber. Thank you. We look forward to learning from each other. After all, the universe is vast enough for many different kinds of wisdom. As the transmission ended, the galaxy prepared for a new chapter in its history. Humanity had not just survived their trial by fire. They had emerged as something the cosmos had never seen before. And they were ready to show everyone else that there was always room to grow.